everybody, it is Steve, your friendly neighborhood lawn gnome. Welcome back to another episode of Stats, Trends, and Picks over here on That's Comical. And if you're watching and it happens to be a Wednesday, happy new comic book day. Well, here we are, everybody. We are now officially heading into the second half of 2025. As a matter of fact, we're also heading into July 4th weekend, so I wish all of you celebrating a very happy and safe Independence Day. They say, especially in my part of the United States, that it's going to be very nice weather-wise, and I am looking forward to a nice holiday weekend, but more importantly, a weekend that actually has some nice sun, because we have had a lot of rainy weekends over here on the East Coast. But anyway, I'm also anticipating a very fun and enjoyable July 2025 when it comes to reading comic books, because there was some really important news that was dropped, and that was the fact that one of my favorite comic book companies right now, because they're giving me so many wonderful comics based on nostalgic properties, finally has escaped the clutches of Diamond Distributors, who is now officially a 100% sinking ship. This is the Titanic. Anyone who has not jumped this ship is officially going to sink. And that, of course, that company is Dynamite Entertainment, the ones that are responsible for titles like Thundercats, Silverhawks, Powerpuff Girls, Space Ghost, all those wonderful books that have just been fueling my love for comics in 2025 and even in 2024. I'm just glad to know that the big announcement came and that my comic book shop manager told me, your Dynamite books will be coming very soon, so get ready. You're going to have a lot of fun stuff to read in July. So I don't really know what the numbers are going to be like for July, because right now they're pretty massive because of the fact that Dynamite is sort of refiguring its schedule to figure out where all the books that were supposed to come out are now officially going to come out. So one way or another, I am very excited about them. And now also knowing that they announced another nostalgic title coming out in September, written by Jimmy Palmiotti, and that of course is The Adventures of Blue Falcon and Dynamite. Cannot wait for that. But also another big piece of exciting news was announced, and it's over at Image Comics. I have been talking about the fact that the Energon universe is one of the hottest items in comic books, along with another Image universe, and that, of course, is the Ghost Machine universe. But there have been a lot of talks about the fact that Daniel Warren Johnson, who has been writing one of the best comic books in the last 3 years, and that, of course, is Transformers, had announced that by issue 25, he was going to be jumping off of the book and pursuing other projects. Nobody knew who was going to take over the book. Was it still going to be good after Daniel Warren Johnson left? I mean, a lot of people were doubting Jorge Corona with the art, and he just took what Daniel Warren Johnson did and gave us some amazing artwork. But they literally waited until down the wire, and I had been saying to so many people, I have a strange feeling because the Energon universe is Robert Kirkman's baby, and he is not going to let a title like Transformers die, let alone let the Energon universe die. It was officially announced that Robert Kirkman is going to be taking over Transformers with issue number 25, and not just that, he's gotten Dan Mora to join him for the artwork. So Kirkman and Mora on Transformers, a whole new arc starting in issue number 25. Look, I will not say that I am going to be excited about the fact that they are coming on because Daniel Warren Johnson is leaving. I will miss Daniel Warren Johnson on this book, but Daniel Warren Johnson is not leaving comics, and there's so many other projects that he's got in the works. But knowing that Robert Kirkman just knew that he was never going to be able to find someone to truly replace the greatness of Daniel Warren Johnson with this title, he said, I'm just going to have to do it myself. So this man, Robert Kirkman, is passionate. He loves these nostalgic properties. You've seen all of the work that he has done for Image Comics, like Invincible and The Walking Dead. He's going to do great on Transformers. And just getting Dan Mora to join him is even better. I mean, I would have loved to have seen Jorge Corona stay on the book, knowing that Mike Spicer is going to be staying on for the inking. That's great. But look, I'm still excited, and I'm even excited to see what the next big chapter of the Energon universe is going to bring, because I believe they're teasing, based on the Free Comic Book Day book of the Energon universe special, that there's going to be a crossover event. So I'm looking forward to that. So I don't think Transformers is going to miss a beat alongside Void Rivals and G.I. Joe. So outside of the news, how did we do in regards to the numbers of June 2025? Well, I'm sure you're not surprised that the numbers are the way they are, particularly with the other conglomerate after coming off of such a major high in May of 2025, based on the fact that Diamond basically withheld Dynamite's distribution of their books, and they were not allowed to get their titles out to the masses. They dropped tremendously, and it was not because of the fact that I wasn't reading any of their stuff. But of course, Marvel is back to where they are, the lowest of the low, and DC and Image are neck and neck. And I'm not surprised that DC is still doing well because their All-In initiative is still very strong, and they just announced a major thing, which I'm going to get to in just a little bit. And then when we take a look at the percentages, once again, Marvel is just lagging. They are just a little under 12%, and they have been there for quite some time. And of course, I was just really upset to see the other conglomerate go from 36% in May to just a little under 17% in June. But Dynamite is back, which means the titles will be spiking. I promise you, I'm anticipating a big July spike for the other conglomerates, and I'm sure that Image and DC will continue to stay neck and neck because they are still giving us amazing stuff. And of course, yeah, the graph is starting to get quite dynamic now. Lots of motion here, and again, I am expecting that green line, that other conglomerate, to go right back to where it was, and seeing that red line continue to stagger for Marvel. So, how did I do in terms of my predictions for June of 2025? Well, I went and broke even, which is not the worst thing in the world. I've gone a couple of times where I've seen nothing. I've gone a couple of times where I've gotten the perfect prediction score, but to go 50-50 and still get great comics, that's all that matters. So, for the first week of June of 2025, I was planning to go over to Dynamite Comics and give it to the Space Ghost annual issue by David Pepose, because this was going to be the issue that bridges the gap from his original Space Ghost Volume 1 to Space Ghost Volume 2, which is actually coming out in July. And knowing that David Pepose is back and Jonathan Lau is still there doing the artwork makes me very, very excited, but unfortunately, this was one of the books that got withheld, and I wasn't able to read it. So, I had to go somewhere else, and believe it or not, it went to a book that I talked about a little bit, but didn't talk about too much afterwards, but boy, did this book end on a high note. It went to Image Comics. The Moon is Following Us, the final issue of the Maxi series, issue number 10, by Daniel Warren Johnson and Riley Rossmo. Again, Daniel Warren Johnson is one of the best writers out there. He is passionate and he loves to have fun, but my God, I did not expect this book to go in the direction that it did, and I sure as hell did not expect the ending that I got, and that was such a heartfelt, emotional ending. This is definitely an amazing book. I want to talk about this book on the channel, and if you didn't read The Moon is Following Us, it's over now. I highly recommend that you do. For the second week of June of 2025, I was planning to go over to DC Comics and give it to the very first of a 3-issue miniseries by one of my favorite duos in comics, and that, of course, is Batman and Robin, Jason Todd, the anticipated sequel to Robin and Batman, which was done by Jeff Lemire and Dustin Nguyen, and I was surprised before I read this book that this book got mixed reviews. There was a lot of negativity toward this book, but when I read it, I thought it was perfection. So, I don't know what it is that I'm not getting, but I think it's simply because of the fact that the people who criticized this book were people that read a lot of books about Jason Todd. And the Jason Todd that I got in this book was the one I expected to get, and I loved this first issue so much. I cannot wait for the second issue of this book. For the third week of June 2025, I was expecting to give it to the second issue of James Tynion IV's Exquisite Corpses number 2 over at Image Comics, and boy did it not disappoint. Was it as fun and crazy as the first issue? No. But but that's just because of the fact that I was on such a high from the environment that was being created in the first issue. Now the story is going. Still had a good time with it. It was definitely a lot of fun, and I'm just so excited to continue reading this book. And for the final week of June 2025, I thought that I was going to be giving it to the last issue of the We Are Yesterday saga, which crossed over Batman, Superman, World's Finest, and Justice League Unlimited. Of course, I'm talking about the 6th part, Justice League Unlimited, issue number 8, by Mark Waid and Dan Mora, simply because of the fact that something big is happening in the DC All-In Initiative, and I'll get to that later, I promise. But this book was fun. I thought that this entire crossover was fun as a whole, but I think I'm a lot more curious about the next issue of Justice League Unlimited, which is the epilogue of We Are Yesterday, that's going to start putting together what is coming for the All-In Initiative, because the buzzer word, the red word, the big word in the world of DC Comics was announced at the end of Justice League Unlimited issue number 8. That infamous word in the DC Universe. You know it, you love to hate it, sometimes you love it. Crisis. So we'll just leave it at that for now. But the winner ended up going to Image Comics and the Ghost Machine universe for the very first time since the first issue of this book. Peter Tomasi and Francis Manipal's The Rockefellers, issue number 6. The first issue of this book I enjoyed so much, and this book was definitely a slow burn, because this is the conclusion of the first story arc, but I knew, because I love Peter Tomasi's writing, that there was going to be a big payoff towards the end of this arc, and everything was going to make sense. And in the last issue, issue number 5, the payoff hit, and it hit big. And this issue had me just with a smile on my face, because it was just so much fun. This was family. That's what this book was. Family trying to solve a crazy situation. It just made me so excited for the next arc, and I'm just so happy that I was right, that the payoff was going to come. My brother-in-law, Teddy, he's a big fan of this book too now. He's even more excited to continue reading it because, boy, did that payoff hit. So that was how June of 2025 went. How is July gonna go? Well, the good news is it's a 5-week new comic book month, so lots of comics to read, but I'm also really anticipating things to change just because of the fact that Dynamite's schedule definitely needs to be reshaped. So it's a work in progress. So we'll see where we end up at the end of that, because I've got a lot of comics on my list for July 2025. A total of 66. I'm anticipating that to go down. For the first week of July 2025, I am actually going to be giving it to a book that I was a little bit surprised about. It also was a very small new comic book week, only 6 books, so I was very intrigued when they announced that there was going to be a book called The Uncanny X-Men, A Prelude to a Future Past by Chris Claremont, and over at Marvel. So what this book is a floppy edition of this story that Chris Claremont wrote a few years back, and it was inserted into a special edition of a Days of Future Past graphic novel. So for those people who never got this graphic novel, this was their opportunity to check out a special The Uncanny X-Men issue number 104 and a half, Prelude to a Future Past. So it's Chris Claremont. He wrote it a while ago based on one of his greatest stories along with John Byrne, so I am anticipating a very good read here. And the truth of the matter is, when Marvel is in the cards for top spot, I am always hoping for the best, because I wish that Marvel would be as good as some of these other companies, so I'm hoping that this will be a good read. For the second week of July 2025, it's going to be a situation where I have to feel like I'm choosing between my children, because we are getting from IDW the long-anticipated sequel of Beneath the Trees Where Nobody Sees, Rite of Spring, issue number 1. Patrick Horvath is back, and I just cannot wait to get back into this world. But there's also a very special comic, and this is actually going to be a first for me. This is my very first Archie book. I have never purchased an Archie book, but for a Archie book written by Kevin Smith called Archie Meets Jay and Silent Bob. You know I am in on this. I love the View Askew-universe. The fact that Kevin Smith is writing this book makes me very excited, so I would be surprised if my top spot is gonna not be one of these two books. I think it might gear more towards Beneath the Trees, but who knows? And for the third week of July of 2025, we got a little deja vu going. I am putting Space Ghost Annual #1 back in the running for July. From Dynamite, from Pepos and Lau. Again, it's too hot to handle. This book is one that's gotten me so excited, and there's so many great books coming out that week as well, including Robin and Batman Jason Todd #2. But I had so much high hopes and expectations for it in June, and knowing that I'm finally going to get it and read it, I'm really anticipating this to be my top pick. For the fourth week of July 2025, here we go, guys. I am going to DC Comics, and I am giving it to Superman issue #28 from Josh Williamson and Dan Mora. This is the first of a 3-part story called The Legion of Darkseid. This is where the big apparent crisis event is going to start taking shape along with the events of the Justice League Unlimited story arc that is starting. So this storyline is going to go all the way back to the All-In special. So I am very excited to see where this goes and how this is going to shape the big fall supposed crisis event. And for the last week of July 2025, one of my highest anticipated books from Mad Cave Studios, David Pepos, is coming to us with a brand new series. Surprised this is not over at Dynamite, but I read the Free Comic Book Day issue #0 of Speed Racer. First of all, this cover looks gorgeous, and even though I'm not getting this cover, I still love the artwork. I don't want to butcher the artist's name, but it's wonderful. And I am expecting such a fun read from Speed Racer, and also found out that even though I'm not the biggest fan of Mark Russell, he's going to be writing a very close-knit sister miniseries, Racer X, coming in September. But knowing that Speed Racer is coming to the comics is making me so excited, especially because of the fact that one of my favorite Mad Caves books is also based on an anime series, Gatchaman by Cullen Bunn. I love it so much. I'm expecting big things from Speed Racer because David Pepos knows how to take these nostalgic titles and make great things out of them in comics. So that's going to wrap up another episode of Stats, Trends, and Picks. Please leave your comments in the box below. Let me know what some of your favorite picks in June of 2025 were. Let me know if I missed anything, and what are some of your big expectations for July of 2025. And once again, have a safe 4th of July, everyone, and I will see you in the next one.